Hey everybody, Todd Michael Putnam here from D&D Creative Table Designs, and I'm doing something I almost never do. Actually, I think this will be the first time I've ever really done one, which is a talking head video. Normally, those who watch my channel know that I'm behind the camera, and I do like the image that you see behind me. That's one of my 3D terrain setups that I do. My whole channel for the last couple of years has been dedicated solely to using 3D terrain and how to use it to tell immersive stories and help make your adventures more exciting. And that's not to say for or against theater of the mind. That's just to say if you're into doing terrain, that's what my channel happens to be about. Me, I'm all about people should play however makes them happy. So if you're a theater of the mind person, I think that's fantastic. And I support you 100%. If you happen to be into terrain, that happens to be my bag. And so my channel happens to be about that. But for this time, I decided to do something different because, as we all know, there's some crazy stuff that's going on in the community with the Open Gaming License 1.1. And that has been massively covered in the last week or so. So I'm not going to bore any of you with by going over the same ground that you've probably heard on all the other channels. We all know what OGL 1.1 is. If you don't, go check out Professor Dungeon Master, go check out Matt Colville, the Questing Beast. Countless D&D channels, of course, or RPG channels have been covering it, and they always do a fantastic job. They do a great job. I listen to those guys. If in the unlikely chance that you're not listening to those guys, definitely go do that because they do a fantastic job. And usually they say the same things that I would say, except for they just say it a lot better, and they have a lot better cameras and studio and effects and stuff like that. My setup is designed just to, I video the tables, and if you want to go check out some of my other videos, you'll see a totally different thing that what I do. But so normally I don't do these talking heads because they say that stuff. But this time I'm going to stick my neck out, and I'm going to talk to you about the new 1.1 Open Gaming License, because despite all the great coverage that I've seen, there's a perspective here that I think is being missed. And that's that ultimately Open Gaming License 1.1 is going to be good for the community. And cue the hate mail. I get it. I totally get it. So let me explain a couple things before we go totally crazy on me. How could I possibly say that? Well, it's not because I think OGL 1.1 is a good move for Wizards of the Coast. I don't. I disagree. I think it's a bad move for them. It's their company. It's their lawyers. It's their profit margins, and they get to decide those things for themselves, whether or not it's legal or not. I have no idea. Go check out, I think it's called Role of Law, and they can tell you all about that kind of stuff. I don't pretend to know, but that's the decision as a private company that they're making. Do I like it? No. Do I think it's good for them? No. But that's what they're doing. I also think that my heart basically goes out for all the content creators that have made their living depending on the Open Gaming License 1.0. The companies and the online content creators, they've taken for 20 years this rock solid thing that's going on for the gaming license, and they've tried to build themselves something in industry, and now all of a sudden it's being yanked out from underneath them, and they're not sure if they're going to get sued, or where their next check's coming from, or how big they can grow, or how, if the instance this license can get tightened even more, with 30 days notice. Now what are they going to do? My heart goes out to them. So with all of that true, and me agreeing with all of those things, how could I possibly say that the Open Gaming License 1.1 is going to end up being good for the community? And I really do believe that it will. So 4 ways, and let me explain. The first is, while it's incredibly painful right now, I think this move by Wizards of the Coast is forcing content creation community people to jump ship and create new standards. Plural, not a new standard, standards. And what I mean by that is not a single new product that's going to be produced, but hopefully several. For example, Cobalt Press just announced their Black Flag RPG is in development, and the demand is so high that their website was crashed by people like me trying to sign up to get onto the play testing to see what they're going to do with their basic open source RPG, for lack of a better term. That may not be the correct technical term, but essentially where they're going to have a gaming license that truly is open and similar to what has been done for the last 20 years and never be taken away again. Matt Coville's team, obviously hugely popular, has already stated that they're going to be working on their own RPG as well, with the same goal in mind, to have it open to that other content creators can build off of it. And of course, we haven't heard from Critical Role yet. They've built a hugely successful show, and I severely doubt, I don't know anybody in Critical Role. I don't have any inside knowledge, pure disclaimer there, but I find it hard to believe that Critical Role is going to want to pay Wizards of the Coast for the honor of advertising the D&D product for Wizards of the Coast for them several hours a week, when they could make their own, potentially, as an example, and reap the profits from that. So again, I have no insight knowledge. Critical Role has not said what they're going to do, so I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but certainly it must be high on their minds that they're not going to want to pay out a percentage of everything they earn for just because they're happy to be using D&D. Heck, they didn't even start with D&D. They started with Pathfinder. So there's no reason they couldn't just jump back to Pathfinder, possibly, unless the OGL 1.0 from that doesn't hold, or whatever the case may be. But the point being that all of these content creators and stuff, there's new standards that are going to be produced. Not just one or two. I think there's going to be several of them. And the fact that Cobalt Press's website got crashed from people looking to sign up says there's a massive amount of player interest there. And I'm going to get back to that in just a second. So there's going to be all these standards. And here's the thing. While other RPGs have been created before, you're like, Todd, but so what? There's Pathfinder, there's Dungeon Crawl Classics, there's the Labyrinth Lord, there's Black Hack, there's White Hack, there's all these different, there's basic fantasy, there's low fantasy gaming, right? There's all these great other ones are out there. That's true. But while the companies have been there, or I should say, while the products have been there, the player base has not. No matter how good those other products were, because AD&D, or the D&D was the 800-pound gorilla in the middle of the room, basically everybody continued to play that. Even when you did anything, it was built off the open gaming license. And so it was still whatever you did was still pointing back to Dungeons and Dragons as being the center of everything. But with legions of former fans now going after going for the proverbial lifeboats, it's far, far more likely that one or more of these alternative RPGs will become a true game standard on the rise. That it's possible, but that can happen now that everybody's actually running for the exits, because in the 50 years up until now, nobody's running for the exits. Everybody was like, well, D&D's here and we've got this open gaming license and we can just use that. So we're gonna stick with that. And so the content creators were happy and the third parties were happy and the YouTubers were happy and stuff. Now a lot of people are not happy. And a lot of people are running for the exits. And so there's all these other game standards that are going to come into play. Now, why are multiple RPG standards good for the community? That's the key question. And it's because having a single standard, excuse me, I'm trying to read my notes as I do this, and I'm trying to do it without my glasses on, so my apologies. But having a single standard that everybody clung to for the last 50 years, in my opinion, has stifled the creativity of the community. You only had so much wiggle room within that license, and no matter what you came up with, as I said, it always pointed back to Dungeons and Dragons, essentially recertifying it as the de facto standard. But now that multiple alternative open standard game formats are going to be available, RPG mechanics can be improved and streamlined in ways that were never really possible before, and people will take notice and people will try them. And that is a great thing for the RPG community. That is a great thing for tabletop gaming, to be able to have other alternative standards that people can go to and try different types of role-playing games and have them be real viabilities. What's the second reason? The second reason is it's actually great for players. If D&D 5th edition, the second reason is it's great for players that OGL 1.0 happened. If D&D 5e wasn't your cup of tea, and for a whole bunch of people there wasn't, look at the OSR industry, the old school Renaissance or old school revival, whatever you want to call it. There was a ton of OGL related games that you could choose from, and I mentioned a bunch of them before, but it was very hard to ever find enough players who were willing to get a campaign going because most of them were there playing D&D. D&D basically sucked all the oxygen out of the room. And that's not necessarily going to be true anymore. Now, I'm not trying to tell anybody that all of D&D is going to collapse and they're not going to have any player base anymore. Ridiculous. There are millions of people playing, and many of them just show up once a week or once a month or whatever it is, and they roll dice and they kill monsters for a few hours. And like it or not, there's plenty of people out there playing Dungeons and Dragons that really don't care about the OGL. It's just a reality. They like the gaming system. It's relatively simple to pick up. They've got a bunch of rule books that they can go grab from, or whatever the case may be. They've been playing it for years, and they're just not going to change. There's always going to be that player base. But the fact that, as example, as I said before, that the website crashed on Black Flag, how many other alternative game systems have you recalled being put on Kickstarter or opening up where the website got crashed because the demand was that high? And with all due respect, and I love Cobalt Press, I have a number of their products and they're fantastic. The driving force wasn't just that Cobalt Press, who's a great company, decided to announce it. The driving force was people are jumping for there's a large segment, and I don't know what the percentage is, I don't pretend to know, but there's a large enough segment of people, of players and GMs and content creators that are not happy because with what's going on with the OGL, that now there's an actual real pool of players to disperse around between all of these other gaming systems and give them the true fair shake that they really deserve. Because the impotence is there. There's a willpower there at the player base. This is a seismic shift in player mentality that I think should not be underestimated. With so many players disillusioned with D&D, but still in love with fantasy role-playing games, it frees up that player base to go try all of these other systems. So finding a campaign that's not D&D 5e will be easier than it ever has been. And that's player choice. And that leads to be, that's a good thing that, again, never would have happened if it wasn't for the Open Gaming License 1.1. And again, I'm not saying this is fun. I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying that isn't stressful time in the community right now with this going on. All of that is absolutely true. But sometimes on the other side of the pain, there's some good things that can happen, and I'm just pointing out a few of the things. The third thing that I think that's good is going to be a better gaming experience for both GMs and players by having that Open Gaming License 1.1 and basically new gaming content being created and a player base expanding out. And how can I say that? Well, think about it this way. You've got massive numbers of players that are trying new open gaming standards, to try this out with, and you've got a massive number of, I shouldn't say massive, but you're going to have another set of games that people can actually play. So now what happens is the industry can actually start tracking the dollars that are spent on those new gaming systems, because it'll be a substantial amount, and you can actually see what the player community was looking for that maybe 5e or previous versions of Dungeons and Dragons didn't offer, that players would have liked more had they had the opportunity sooner. And I'm not even saying this to try and bash Dungeons and Dragons or Wizards of the Coast in any way, shape, or form. I played 5e, I played first, second edition, I played basic, and I had a blast with all of them. So I'm not trying to rip on Wizards of the Coast or their game system at all. All I'm saying is that if you don't know anything different, then you don't try anything different. And if there doesn't seem to be any viable opportunities, like, oh, well, Dungeon Crawl Cross looks great, but you know what? Nobody in my area plays it, so I'm just going to go back to 5e. And it becomes a self-defeating loop where you can't really get anything started because nobody else is there with you. That's changed. With a player base that's willing to try something new and a whole bunch of something news that actually have public attention, you've now got an opportunity that you can start putting money in there as the players start spending stuff. And these products are going to get support. Where that support comes in, that's going to start driving that industry and start growing it and making a much more viable opportunities for people to play in, because it won't just be one source book and maybe one or two modules. They'll start being additional source books and stuff that are going along to really fully support some of these great alternative role-playing standards. So none of that would have happened either if the OGL 1.1 didn't leak and pushed so many of us to the exits and say, okay, I'm not happy with this, and we need to go do something else, even if we don't know exactly what that is right now. So that's what's going on as far as that's concerned. I'm sorry, there's one last thing. The content creators are going to benefit. And I'm sure right now you're saying, Todd, you're out of your mind. I want you to think about it. Once these new gaming standards begin to emerge, content creators are going to have multiple gaming systems worth of stuff to talk about. Instead of being all about Wizards of the Coast and what the latest new release is, and every single channel is covering that same book for the next 3 months or whatever it is, or the same set of tactics or rules or dives or something like that on the same gaming system. It's going to be the most exciting time, in my opinion, in the last 50 years of tabletop role-playing game to be covering stuff. If you're a content creator, you're going to be able to look when those play tests start coming out and you're getting community feedback. There's absolutely going to be people looking to hear about what that feedback is, what those play tests are like, what those trusted content creators think about the new gaming systems that are happening. What does Cobalt Press's Black Flag look like? What are the gaming mechanics that are going into it? What was the experience playing it? How well were the rules written? What kind of feedback were they looking for? Same thing with Matt Coville's, and other people produce other game systems, as I'm sure they will. All that's going to be in there, and all that is food for thought. But the difference is, you can say, well, a lot of that stuff's been there. Yeah, but there wasn't a huge horde of players that was looking to devour that content before, was there? And now there is a lot more than there was before. Now, I'm not even saying that it'll be as much as currently is, for 5e, or that 5e won't still have the lion's share. It might still, and I expect it probably still will have the lion's share. But the percentage is going to open up significantly for these alternative gaming systems and for content creators to be able to report on them. And they'll get the hits and the views that support that if they just make the jump. And to be honest with you, with so many people jumping ship, as has been said, with expressing their frustrations, as scary as it is at this particular moment in time, and I understand it completely, I'm a content creator myself, as scary as it is, there's a certain amount of safety in numbers when you see everybody heading for the exit. That's the thing to do. There's nothing wrong with going with that flow and saying, okay, we need to jump in this direction to protect both myself, to serve the people that I'm trying to give information to, because now there's a whole segment of people looking for a whole bunch of information on all these new gaming systems, and somebody has to be there to support them and serve them. And that's the content creators. They're going to win from that. So the last thing I want to say about this, not specifically about the open gaming license directly, but as just a personal thing in life, whenever I see creative people being backed into a corner, I always bet on the creative people, 100%. Because literally what they do is they figure out how to do something that everybody else says can't be done, or looks too scary, or looks too hard. Creative people, that's literally how their minds work. And the tabletop role-playing game community is literally what we're built from, is creative people who spend their time playing games that put them in situations where they're supposed to be near impossible or feel very difficult, and they have to figure out a way heroically to work their way through it. Yes, it's in real life as opposed to those games. I'm not saying it's a one-to-one parallel or anything, but creative people are creative people, both at work and outside of work. And so when they're playing games, they're creative. And then when it comes to their jobs, the content creators, they're going to be creative in how they're going to make this work. There's going to be very few people that just throw in the towel and say, forget this. The people that have been committed to it for a long time, they're going to make this thing fly. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be scary. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be a lot of sleepless nights. It doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a tremendous amount of time and effort and energy. It doesn't mean that there isn't going to be missteps. It doesn't mean there isn't going to be time when there's rough feedback and they're going to have to course correct for that. All that's true. All that's true. And so I'm not suggesting for one moment that this is a light and easy thing. What I'm saying is, on the other side of the pain, that things are not going to go back to normal. But the new normal, I think, is going to be better for everybody in the long run. And while it's absolutely okay to be frustrated and upset and to voice your opinion and to let Wizards of the Coast know how you feel about this, in my personal opinion, and this isn't written in stone anywhere, I want to be absolutely clear, but in my personal opinion, the ship's already sailed. Even if Wizards of the Coast were to backtrack and say, early April Fool's joke, we were just kidding. The serious content creators that staked their livelihood on OGL 1.0 are probably spooked enough that they're not going to go, well, they're just going to say, we can't trust this. We have to jump anyway. The cat's out of the bag. And it starts that process. And there's enough players that, because of the length of time it's been since Wizards of the Coast has made any clarifying statements, none really to this point, except for one saying, we hear that you're upset and we'll get back to you. Which they at least said something, but they didn't really clarify anything. They just thanked us for our patience, while a lot of people were frankly not feeling patient. there's enough frustration in the player base that there's a lot of people that are just going to jump no matter what. It's just a matter of what they're going to jump to. And they're probably going to hop around a little. They're going to try a little of this. They're going to try a little of that. I'm sure that the OSR community and some other different games are going to get some player influx just for people willing to try something while they wait for the new play tests of the new alternative gaming systems to come out. So creative people, they're going to make things work. Now, I am not saying that we should be thankful to the Wizards of the Coast. Not what I'm saying. Don't try and make me say that. That's not what I'm suggesting. Clearly, they did this with the intent of increasing their own control over the content, with increasing, their bottom line, which every company that's its purpose for existence, and raising their profits. And time is going to tell how that works out for them. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball on that, and I don't know what their books look like, and I don't, know all the margins. I don't pretend to know. Time will tell how that turns out for them. But my 2 cents is that they have unintentionally done the tabletop role-playing game community a huge favor. The best thing they ever did was the Open Gaming License 1.0. The worst thing that they probably ever did for their company, in my opinion, will be Open Gaming License 1.1. But even if they don't go forward with it, the fact that they announced it and then haven't done anything about it, so much goodwill that you can just see is being burned through in the community, that I think they're going to lose a percentage of their player base, which is substantial enough to be able to support other alternative channels, other alternative products. So with that, I'm going to close it up. As for my YouTube channel, like as you can see behind me, this is what I do, tabletop terrains and stuff, to help people learn how to create visually immersive stories with stuff. And I've been pushing out new videos every week for about 2 years now. So if you don't use, even if you don't use your terrain, you might like to just pick up some story ideas for a lot of times I just have the adventure idea. Here's what's going on. Here's what happens in this room. And this is, the overall storyline. And you don't have to have the terrain. You could actually pick up any of those ideas and use them. If you do like the terrain, you're getting into it, by all means, check out the channel. And you can also check out my Facebook community, D&D Creative Table Designs. We're about 37,000 people strong, I think it is, in 3 years, and still growing. It's a very positive, great outlet. People, we just stay focused on the terrain. That's all that it's about. Helping other people improve their own terrain, checking out all the stuff that other people do and inspiring each other. It's a really positive, wonderful place. So check that out. Also, my Instagram at toddmichaelputnam.com. And I'll leave all that in the links below. Thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe and share this video if the insights are useful to you. And I definitely want to hear your thoughts and feedback below. Take care, and I will see you guys next adventure. Bye.